Today, I'm talking to John Wheatcroft. John.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. It's
You're welcome.
real
Most welcome.
to talk to you.
Thanks.
So, look, traditional first question, which is, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm a guitar player, although you probably wouldn't tell by all this going on.
That's just put me off the scent, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a guitar player, frustrated bass player. I think that's the thing. But I think I'm predominantly a guitar player, and I kind of split my time between playing, which is about 50% of what I do, and then the other 50% of what I do is talking about playing to people too. So teaching. I'm quite active in a few universities. I work for 3 different unis, and then also maybe some people might know me from Guitar Techniques magazine and things like that. I've been a contributor to Future Music or Future Publishing. So they've got a kind of a stable of mags like Guitar Techniques, Guitarist, less so Total Guitar actually. I don't really do too much stuff for them, but I've been generating content for them for like 15 years now. Yeah, so it's a combination of different things. So depending upon where you catch me in the year, I might be doing more of one thing and less of another. But at the moment, it seems like post pandemic, it's all happening at once, you know, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So I normally like to sort of just get people to tell their story and stuff, because obviously,
sure.
When did you start? Yeah, when did you start being interested in music? What's your earliest sort of recollection?
I played violin in school. I remember when I was a child in school, and they came around and asked, did anybody want to take instrumental lessons? As I think at the time, you had the benefit of being able to take lessons for free and stuff like that, you know. And I desperately wanted to play the clarinet. But that was the option. And I remember going home to my parents and saying, I've been given the opportunity to take clarinet lessons, and when they found out that I had to hire the clarinet, they didn't have a great deal of money, my mum and dad, so they couldn't afford it basically. And what transpired is that they would lend you a violin for free. So I didn't choose violin because I had any burning desire to play the violin. It was just that was what was on offer. So consequently, I ended up taking a violin home, playing violin for a few years, but then as soon as I had the opportunity to kind of switch to guitar, well, actually, first off, I think it was an acoustic guitar when I was about 9 or 10, but then there was an opportunity to buy an electric bass guitar, and I didn't really know what the difference was, to be fair. They just kind of said electric, and I went, yes, I'll take it. So I played electric bass guitar for a little while, and then was learning all the guitar lines on it and whatnot, and then switched to electric guitar probably around 11, 12. I just mucked around as you do when you're, just coming up to being a teenager, like school bands, and, and I'm sure we were terrible, we were playing, doing our best to kind of copy Jimi Hendrix and Cream and all that kind of stuff. But then by the time I got to I'd say by 14 or 15, I started getting serious about it. I started practicing per se. Previous to that, I was just playing, and just me and school friends just mucking about. But then I think I'm not entirely sure what the turning point was, but there was a definite switch in my mind when I realized this was something that I could maybe do. So then by the time I hit about 15 or 16, that was kind of when there was a real big leap up in terms of guitar education, and I was fortuitous that I would have been around that time. So that would be when Guitarist magazine probably would have first hit the news agents, and then all those REH videos came out, which I can pretty much quote word for word. Yeah. So I'm a kind of a product of that. Paul Gilbert and Frank Gambale and all that with with that yellow guitar, with the Australian sticker on it and all that. And so that's kind of like the environment that I grew up with, and it's kind of weird in a way, because it's that has had a lasting effect on me, because the players that I admired, I kind of went from all the usual suspects, the Claptons and the Hendrixes, and I thought I had a grasp of that, and then I had Van Halen, and it was like, okay, right, regroup and start again. And then I thought I had a grasp of that, and I had Yngwie Malmsteen, and then that was regroup and start again. And along the way, kind of picked up on things like Django, and that got me into jazz. But the players that were kind of active that I really admired were the ones that seemed to have these dual careers, the likes of the Paul Gilberts and so on, who were articulate and could write a column in Guitar Player or what have you. And they were teaching at the Musicians Institute, which for me was like that was something that was just unreachable or whatever. But they were also they were also great players, and I thought I wouldn't mind having a bit of that, being able to kind of balance. Frank Gambale was playing with Chick Corea, but then also he was putting out education material, and he seemed to be, from what I don't know whether he was ever there or not, I don't know, but the way that it was portrayed, that he was working at Musicians Institute as a teacher, but then also he had a recording and touring career at the same time, and I thought that was cool. That for me seemed to be like something I was interested in, and I've always been interested in that. I'm not someone who's wanted to teach guitar just to pay the mortgage. I'm into it. I see that as kind of like it goes hand in hand with playing. Like the two things are the same, which is one of the reasons why I've kind of, and it's tough actually when teaching commitments really bite hard, that you to try and maintain a playing schedule as well. But I feel like you've got it. I feel like I've got a responsibility. So in a kind of as short a way possible, that's kind of where I came from, and all the usual stuff, then playing in local bands around Liverpool, original music, cover bands, you name it. Then started getting into playing jazz, and then doing that on a provincial level, then getting some opportunities to kind of play with some other players that you could sort of play on a wider, national level. And then eventually that culminated in doing some gigs where I could play internationally, which was great, and then the opportunities to then starting off teaching around Liverpool, but then an opportunity came to branch out working in London at the birth of one of these new kind of rock schools, as it were. And I just seemed to be in the right place at the right time,
Yeah, see, I find this fascinating, because you're saying, I seem to be in the right place at the right time. This is quite a common thread that runs through things when I speak to people, that sort of just being in that place, and also having either the thing of saying, yeah, I can do that type of thing, when you look back and you go, well, I don't know, actually maybe I could have done that. You know what I mean?
Of course,
being able to say yes to an opportunity, but also that sort of that thing of your environment is good for that. Obviously, you were talking about Liverpool.
Yeah.
And obviously Liverpool, because of historically, is, you'd have that feeling of I could do this.
Yeah, well, do you know what? The funny thing is, it's getting better as well. I'm in Liverpool now. I kind of like, I go between both. So I'm in Liverpool now, but I'm off to London tomorrow. So I spend I kind of like live in two places, if that's possible. But when I was kind of at that stage where we were just beginning to start playing live, there were venues everywhere where there was live music, and to the extent that I couldn't drive at that time, and I'd just leave my gear at one gig on a Thursday night or Friday night, pick it up on the way to the gig on a Saturday. That would be the kind of the regular thing, and then Saturday go Monday, and I think I was playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday pretty much every week. And then I had a little period, sort of, I guess, like 10 years ago, when I ended up coming back, because I was in London full time, and then I come back to Liverpool, and then I commute back and forth, where I'd go past all these venues and they were all like boarded up, or they turned into something else, and it felt a bit like, where is the opportunity for people to play, and it was a bit sad, but I've got to be honest, in recent years, like, I don't know if you've spent much time in Liverpool recently, but it's flipping, it's on the up, and I tell you, like, there's there's so many areas with live music. I mean, 7 nights a week, like kind of like one of the reasons why I went to London is because it was 7 nights a week. And Liverpool's like that now. There's the Matthew Street area. There's another area, the Baltic Triangle, which is just outside of town by the docks. And there's new venues every week, and then the growth area now is it's the docks, but coming out of town, which is where Everton's football ground is moving to. So that's an area of massive development. So anyone who bought a property there 10 years ago is going to be a millionaire in a few years,
Yeah.
And so live music it's really on the up, I mean, but it seems to be like that everywhere, to be honest, though.
Yeah, I see. These are the type of little components that actually add to the fact that it produces artistic people. Not because necessarily somebody says, "Oh, there's some sort of curricular thing in school that does that." I mean, okay, the fact that you had free lessons is something I'm going to come back to, actually. Yeah. I think this is like really, really important. But just generally speaking, if it's in the air, if it's in the air that can happen, then you will get people interested in music. They will play music. They will watch music and listen to music and stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I've got to be honest as well. Sometimes, when these kind of things where common question, is who your influences are, and I've done it loads in guitar magazines. If I've interviewed somebody that which I don't do that many of, but when I've had the opportunity to interview, George Benson or something, one of the big question is who are your influences, and very often the answers are famous people. You say Charlie Christian and Grant Green or whatever. And whilst that's the case for me, if someone to say who am I influenced by, the answer is everybody you'd expect, all the people that we've heard of, right? I'm just as equally influenced by a whole bunch of people you've probably never heard of, right? Yep. who are people that I could actually go and see in the flesh, right? Yep. And could be playing the guitar or whatever it might be, 6 foot in front of me, and I can touch them, you know what I mean? And I can actually go and have a conversation with them in between. And then you sort of see, this is actually possible. This is not a dream, like a Hollywood dream where these people are untouchable. I've seen, there's a guy from Liverpool. So I kind of got involved in playing the Django Reinhardt style. But there's a guy from Liverpool called Gary Potter. Yeah. And he's unbelievable. He's like flipping, he's a world-class player. And not only is he a world-class player now, he has been consistently for the past 35 years, from when he was like flipping 50. He's only a year or two older than I am. He's like, I think he's about 54, something like that, and I'm 53. So he's maybe a year, maybe 18 months older than me. But from pretty much when I started going out, right, I could go and see him play live. So I've had a reference of somebody that I can have a conversation with, and we become friends and we play together loads, as opposed to some superstar who I don't know. And to a certain extent, you don't really know how well they play, because every time I've heard Charlie Christian, I've heard him playing at his best, on a record or whatever. I've not seen him live in a club, on a Wednesday night consistently every week like I have with Gary, There's another guy called Les Bolger, who was one of my early teachers. And again, they used to do and I'm sure he still does something similar, a regular Sunday night jazz gig on Dale Street, which me and all my mates could turn up to and see him play, like every week, every single week. And he'd let me sit in and whatever. And they must have recognized some ability, even though at the time when I was doing that, I was probably more of a rock player. But there's something about being able to physically see somebody, which you don't get from listening to records,
No, you don't. I think, that's such an important sort of component, because again, we sort of mentioned this a little bit before press record, but as you say, often and of course this happens with education, because it's really difficult not to fall into this trap, but there tends to be the sort of codification of information, like to become good you need to do X, Y, and Z, and now because contemporary guitars become a little bit like a classical instrument in the way that it's formalized. But of course, if you go back, in fact, if you look at really great guitar players' technique, it's all over the place. It's not like a classical piano technique where right from the beginning, well, you've got to sit like this and hold your hand like that. for everything you tell somebody not to do, there's some great player who does that thing, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's something that, you know, you've got. I'm sort of mindful of this in my own playing, and I try and put this across to students. I've got, you know, so for example, I've been talking to some of my degree students at the minute about your formulation of your own style, and you know, for me, a few years ago, I wanted to incorporate way more intervallic ideas in my playing. So I ended up just devouring Joe Diorio's educational material. You know, I just immersed myself in that. But the problem, of course, at the end of playing through intervallic designs for jazz guitar like 3 or 4 times, you know, I'm going through it again at the minute. I'm like, this is like a 4th pass, right? And you can play those things, but they're Joe's ideas, you know. And then the thought goes through my head. I go, how many people bought this book? You know, like thousands, you know. So there's thousands of guitar players in the world who all got the same vocabulary under the fingers. So whilst you might be able to con someone provincially that they're your ideas, it's not going to wash on the, you know, in the larger community, because people are going to identify and go, oh, lick 35, I know that one as well. So what I've been saying to them is, what I did is I kind of like, I've written volume 2, an imaginary volume 2, you know. So if Joe Diorio had written intervallic designs for jazz guitar volume 2, what might be in it? So a whole bunch of ideas that are not his, they're not the ones that are in that book, but they're definitely a development of or inspired by. And I generally use those, not the ones from, you know, from his book, as it were. And it's something that I've always done with things. I always kind of stress it pretty much every month in Guitar Techniques magazine, where I say, here's a bunch of, I don't know, Pat Metheny licks or whatever. And I'll say, okay, this is the start, not the end. You know, what you've got to try to do with this is take the essence of this, like, you know, why he might come up with those ideas, because it's the tip of the iceberg, and try and come up with your own phrases, because that's the interesting thing, you know, rather than it sounding like, you know, like, so there are some teachers who teach in that way, where if you go to them and say, I want to learn to play 2-5-1s, you'll come out with a sheet with 20 2-5-1 licks on it. Yeah. And that's great, because you think you're doing something. The problem with it is that they give that sheet to about 200 other people, and they've all got the same 2-5-1 ideas. What's interesting is if you kind of like learn them, kind of rip it up and start again, yeah. You know. But,
yeah. See, obviously, when we started off, if you work things off the record, you didn't always get it right, did you?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah.
In a way, that was already sort of seeded into you developing your own style, because you had to make a call on, if you slowed a recording down and it was a bit like it got to sort of dirge level, you were guessing, you were thinking, well, I think it's that he's doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And subsequently, you were using your own ear to formulate a musical idea.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this quite a lot, because I did some stuff with Chaz Hodges from, you know.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, mate.
And Chaz was talking about, you know, how they started off in the days before you could get anything. Well, obviously, I couldn't get anything that was in the right key published, because it was nonsense. You know, the Beatles Complete was all in the wrong key and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
so everything was worked off the record. Now, I could get recordings, you know, on import type of thing, but of course, he had to get recordings from somebody he knew who was in the Merchant Navy, who could bring a record back from America, right? Or he had to wait till, you know, Lonnie Donegan was on the TV. So they'd all crowd round to somebody's house who had a TV to work out how he played that chord, you know. Yeah,
he'd have one pass at it as well, because he couldn't record it. Yeah, he'd get to see it once in real time.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing was, you often got it wrong.
Yeah, I bet you.
In the end, created your own thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's something as well about, you know, I feel for like young players at the moment, where, because there's two things, like one of them is, you know, we often attribute value to scarcity, don't we? So, you know, when I had that one cassette with Van Halen 1 on it, you know, and that was it, you know, I listened to it for flipping months, you know. I can remember hearing that and listening to Eruption and thinking, what is that? Is that even a guitar? You know, is that, and not having I couldn't go online and go YouTube tutorial to show me how to play it. Like, I had to kind of try and figure it out, you know. But also the fact that there's so much stuff out there, like in terms of, you know, you can go on YouTube and check out any artist in the world, like at your fingertips. There was a thing for me personally where, even though I'd read about these guitar players and whatever, you know, I couldn't go into a record shop and buy a Jeff Beck record, you know, because they just had top 40s. They had like flipping Gary Newman and Japan and all that kind of stuff. And I was where do I get Danny Gatton's albums from? You know, like where? So somebody had like a tape, you know, of Danny Gatton or whatever, and it was like gold. You know, we'd like trade these things like they were flipping, you know, like unbelievably valuable. So when you'd finally get hold of something, this like mythical recording of like Jeff Beck or whatever, it was something that I'd listened to over and over and over and over and over and over. Whereas, you know, I know now when I teach students or whatever, I go check out Wes Montgomery, and they go home and they put him in on YouTube, watch him for 20 minutes, and then they've done that, and then in the corner it says, if you like Wes Montgomery, you'd probably like Grant Green. And they come back and go, oh yeah, I've done jazz, you know, like in 24 hours. And like, no, that's not enough. You've basically got to listen to an album to the extent that you don't even need to play the album anymore. It's like it's there, yeah, because again, you know, like working, as you say, working things out, and, you know, putting the needle on the recording or whatever you were going to do, you know, slowing something down on an open reel, and it went round and round and round. Absolutely. So it takes real discipline now, because you've got all these distractions to not do that, you know, like that's something I'm still to this day exceptionally slow at listening to music. So if someone goes, you know, and I buy new albums and they sit in a pile, or they sit either, you know, in the iTunes or whatever, and they don't get listened to, because when I listen to something, I listen to it for weeks, you know. So I've got a backlog of flipping hundreds of these things that I'll get to them eventually, hopefully, you know, if I stick around for long enough, I'll get through them all. But I'm not someone who listens to something once, you know, and then moves on to the next thing, because I don't get anything from it. I've got to listen to it flipping 10 times before I can actually absorb it. Whereas there's that much distraction now, because everything's available to you. I think to be a young player now and not fall into the trap of kind of like panic listening or panic researching, because everyone feels like there's a race on and you've got to be amazing now. You know, yesterday you've got to be incredible to keep up with some, you know, there's some flipping 12-year-old on YouTube who can play every, you know, he plays like Guthrie Govan or something, you know, that's so everyone feels like there's a race on, you know, whereas the reality of it is, you've got to take your time with this stuff and be patient. As Joe DiOrio says, you know, this stuff comes, it happens when it happens, and you can't force it. Sorry, you know,
because it's really about your own voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's finding your own sound, and
it is, yeah.
You know, and it doesn't take long from like, because used to teach a lot of singing as well. Yeah, and what used to fascinate me was that you would get, you know, these girls coming along, mostly girls coming along to learn singing, right? And they could sing like whoever it was who was the flavour of the month. They had the quirk about that sound in their head. Yeah. And then somebody else would appear, you know, let's say Adele, just as an example. And within, you know, 2 or 3 months, you get these kids turning up and they've got essentially what's going on. Okay, they haven't got the range or stuff, but they've got the sound. Okay, yeah. And you think that's amazing that the human voice can do that. That a sound that was pretty unique could suddenly not be unique. Yes, in a short period of time. The mannerisms become part of the sort of the public domain, so to speak. Yeah. So, and I think that is true about, you know, any musical instrument. So going back to the thing about guitar is about, well, you need your voice, and your voice needs to be you. It is obviously influenced by other people, because that's about the language of music. But what makes it your voice? And I think that's getting increasingly harder for young players to get, or even understand. You know,
maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. So there's one of the styles that I'm kind of active in is this Django Reinhardt inspired acoustic jazz, acoustic swing, which goes under the title of gypsy jazz, but like that's kind of the colloquial like way that people talk about this. But it's not. And for many years, it was the domain of gypsy players, you know, where if you wanted to sort of see the real deal, you had to that's where you had to go to see it, because it wasn't sort of popular outside. But what's happened from about 2000, when Borelli Legren came back to that style of music with the Gypsy Project, which was a massive success. I mean, unbelievable success. It's become way more mainstream now. So now there's pockets of this style of music happening everywhere in the world. And it's no longer the exclusive domain of gypsy players, you know. But the thing with it is that there's a festival that goes on every year, and Samwell's the same, which is probably the biggest one. It's phenomenal. It's a real kind of event. But I always, you know, I've been there multiple times. I got to play it with John Jorgenson a few years ago, which was amazing. But what I always kind of, it's always a bit bittersweet where you get into the jam sessions, which is probably where the action is in that festival, actually, more so than on stage, where you hear hundreds of players that all sound like Stockerlo Rosenberg, you know, like they're playing his licks, you know, and they're doing it unbelievably well. Right. But the ones that stand out, the players that stand out for me are the ones that have got that thing that you're talking about. They're coming at it with something a little bit different, you know, and they're there. They are there, but there's not that many of them, but they're the ones that for me, that's what appeals to me, is to hear someone who's not doing things, you know, for sure. There is that sort of, shall we say, public domain section of everybody's playing, you know, idiomatic vocabulary that everybody does. And it's kind of cool to quote the odd Django lick here or there. But if your style is exclusively based upon that, then I kind of think you're in trouble. And you could maybe have a great provincial career. You know, I'm sure there's some player in Tokyo who's the hot gypsy jazz player in Tokyo who sounds exactly like Angelo De Bar or whatever. And there's somebody who's in Copenhagen who's exactly the same guy, and there's somebody in, you know, wherever it might be. The problem, of course, is when they come to the world stage or the world summit, as it were, they all kind of sound the same. But provincially, you know, they're going to do okay. But the players that stand out are the ones that are doing that. So there's a young French player called Antoine Boyer who's just exceptional, and he's exquisite, you know, and he's got that down. But he's equally, if you put a classical guitar in his hands, and you know, he understands the classical canon, as it were. And Adrien Moyard, who's another young, relatively young anyway, compared to me, that is, French guitar player, who is just, he's taken Borelli's thing, which is modernizing the genre, and then some, you know. So to the extent that, you know, Borelli's no fool, you know, and he's acutely aware of these guys, and he's like, you know, he's brought them into the fold type of thing, and he's definitely acutely aware of what they've got to say, and you know, I mean, Borelli's just a genius. There's no two ways about it. What that guy can do, and every now and again, you know, I kind of forget how good he is, and then once a year I go and stalk him on a bunch of gigs, you know, and remind myself, like, you know, and everybody I think tends to agree, you know, that guy's just the best, you know, by a mile. But that said and done, there is a new kind of generation of young players in that style who are definitely pushing it on, and they're the ones that appeal, and that's where I live, you know, or that's where I aspire to live. You know, I'm not someone who wants to sound like any of them. I'd like to sound like I've got no problem playing with those guys, but I don't want to sound like any of them, you know. And hopefully, well, that's something that I've tried to aspire to with my own playing. It's like, I don't want to play like anyone, but I want to, you know, I would like to think that the players that I admire, that they would like what I do, you know, as opposed to trying to sound like them. In fact, to be fair, the last thing they want to do is hear somebody who sounds exactly like them.
Oh, obviously.
or an imitation of them, you know. I mean, I've seen people do it, man. I've been at Paul Gilbert masterclasses and seen people play Paul Gilbert's licks to him, you know. And to be fair, he's not into it, you know. You can tell he's not. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, what else have you got, you know? When someone plays like themselves, he responds to that, you know. And he's like, that's cool. That you've got ideas. It's like a conversation. It's no good having a conversation with someone who agrees with everything you've got to say. Well, you know, where's the fun in that, you know?
Yeah, so absolutely. So you got to this sort of point where you're about sort of 15 or 16, and you're starting to go like, oh, I could do this. You know, what was the thing that? Is there any particular thing that you looked at and went, yeah, it was that moment when, you know, this happened?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Taking a proper job and realizing it sucks.
Oh, that's it.
That's the one for me. Taking a job doing normal, taking normal people jobs 9 to 5 and going, this ain't for me, mate. I'm not into this. So I left school.
Okay, go on.
I left school, took a proper job in an office, and went, not for me. And I lasted about a year, I think, and then went, I'm out of here. Like I can't do this. And I went to music college, and from then on in, that's pretty much where I've lived. You know, so it's great. You know, anyone who's having any musicians that are having any kind of like dilemma with their playing or whatever, if you want to reinvigorate your love for music, just take a proper job for a while, and you'll soon find out that it's not all bad, you know. And even when you think it's bad, it's not that bad, you know. So that was definitely something for me where I thought, I don't fancy doing this. I mean, you know, no disrespect to anyone that does that, and some people, you know, that they really want security and stability and so on, and it works for them, and it's not a problem. It just didn't work for me at all, and I realized it was not where my strengths lay. And I was fortunate enough to go to a great little music college in Liverpool, Greenbank, Sandown College of Music, and I went on a jazz and classical course, which was brilliant. And at the time, you know, I had kind of a pink Jackson, I think, or Charvel or whatever, you know, and I'm, you know, with a pointy headstock and a Floyd Rose tremolo, and I'm learning Stolen Moments by, you know, and learning standards, and like, but it was great, you know, it was really great. Unfortunately, then I got opportunity to go once a week to the Guitar Institute and that was when I probably was about 18, where I'd read about the Guitar Institute in Acton, which I, funny enough, ended up kind of teaching in the same road. It was in a different building at that point. And they were not doing validated courses at the time. You know, like now these schools have grown into massive, big institutions that do degree courses, and they were just doing night school, like night courses where you go for 2 hours a week and have a class with Alan Limbrick, who was amazing. And I saw, actually, when I was looking at the podcast, I saw you'd done one with Max Milligan, and Max was one of the guys that was there at that time. Jay Stapley and Ian Scott and Sean Baxter, and Sean has been instrumental in my life from that point to this, you know. And we stayed in touch, and he was one of the factors that contributed to me moving to London, you know. So I was fortunate enough to get that. I got a bit of a grant, and they paid for me to come up like 24 hours in town, and I would go. At the time, I think they had a thing where the classes were on video, and you could go to Chandler Guitars. You could go to Charlie Chandler's and watch classes on video. So I'd go and do that in the afternoon. I had a one-to-one lesson. They paid for one-to-one lessons with Sean Baxter, which were just flipping life-changing. And then I did a class with Alan Limbrick in the night, but then they had guest tutors. I think Jay Stapley did it. John Etheridge did a couple. There was a few. Ian Scott might have done one or two, I think. And it was amazing, you know, because I was reading about this place where it was saying this is, you know, these guys are good. And I wanted to actually go and see how good is good, you know, like, because it's one thing reading about it. It's a different thing being 3 foot away from Sean, playing through a tune with him. And I'm realizing, I mean, because he's meticulous, man. I don't know do you know, have you had a chance to?
I don't know him very well, but I sort of met him a few years ago, actually. Well, it was the LCM, basically. So, He's one of the most meticulous, studious, like no stone unturned, like, you know. And there's a point when, to be fair, what was interesting with Sean, because he really, you know, he must have recognized something in me, like, because then we stayed friends, and he recommended me for work, and that's how I ended up, you know,
teaching in London and getting gigs in London because he was putting me up for them. Because I think, the arrogance of youth, I kind of went in and went, I'm okay with technique. I kind of, I don't need that. I'm fine with all that stuff. There's just some areas, like as if, technique. I mean,
Yeah.
Now I should at the flipping, the balls, he must have thought with balls on this kid, but I was like, there's certain aspects of theory that I'm and applying certain ideas that I'm stuck with. Can you help? And we just worked on those areas, and then also just played, and what was immediately clear was not so much like that he was actually showing me like, this is how you do this. What was immediately clear was how much time and attention he put in to certain areas, and you think, okay, that's how good you need to be with everything. So in a way, by leading by example, not necessarily him going play this, play that, but by recognizing, okay, if you want to get good, you need to know all of this stuff to this level. And I want to be, again, I don't want to play like him, but I want to play as good as him, and maybe have different opinions about these areas, but be as knowledgeable, and to be at that level where you've got that sort of level of fluency and articulation. And that was an absolute game changer for me. It was like, okay, I thought I was on top of this stuff. Now I realize how much work I've got to do, when you think that.
You've hit on a really important thing here, because again, I see, because obviously this podcast, I could be interviewing guitarists for every episode, but I try to sort of expand it out to all the different areas of sort of creativity. And the thing is that I like to sort of look at this from the point of view of the sort of metaphor of understanding the operating system and not necessarily what's on the screen. And when you were talking about the sort of like the 251 thing and going away with your chart, and I've got 20 licks that I can play over 251.
Yeah.
That's like what's on the screen. It's like understanding how, deep into that.
Yeah.
How you arrive at that thing, which again takes, drilling right down into something. So it's not even something that's necessarily easy to transmit out. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's like learning a language.
Yes.
Okay, I can speak French to the level that I could order a coffee, but I can't really speak in terms of, I don't understand the language well enough to express myself in any meaningful way. I could probably, buy a train ticket, or something like that, because I've only got a limited understanding of the combination of, and it's phrase book. It's like memorizing sentences verbatim, which I could probably fool someone if I was an actor, and you got certain lines to speak. But there's a real difference between actually being able to speak fluently and not have to have all this stuff prepared and be able to just play.
Exactly. I run a music school that, like a summer school that has been going for about sort of 14, 15 years.
Okay.
And to set this up, my sort of due diligence was to go to attend one of Jamie Aebersold's jazz schools back in the day. And they had a guitarist there, guy called Corey Christensen.
Oh yeah, I know Corey. Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's Mike Christensen's son, and fabulous player.
He's incredible. Yeah.
But he came up with this thing which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and he said, I've got a lot of friends who are German. He said, and I can say a lot of things that sound like German, but they're not. He said,
yeah,
jazz is like that.
Absolutely, and I get it. It's like, for example, I can't speak Japanese, so you could take some prose, someone like speaking a speech or whatever in Japanese, take every sentence and put them all in the wrong order, so it's gobbledygook. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I'd listen to it and go, yeah, kind of sounds like Japanese. Right. So in a way, like this. That's kind of like where players learn licks.
Exactly.
So you learn jazz. Say we're looking at jazz. You learn jazz licks, and you just splatter them out. But it doesn't make any sense because it's not cohesive. There's no kind of motivic development. That's it. That's exactly what he's saying. It's not just about regurgitating licks verbatim. That can kind of like, it can maybe kid someone who doesn't really know what they're listening to. If you don't understand the idiom, you might get away with it, type of thing. But it's not what it's about, you know. I mean, I got absolutely roasted on a gig. It's probably the greatest lesson, and I've spoke about this before, but the greatest lesson I ever had was getting just basically getting ripped to shreds by a saxophone player at the end of a gig, where he just told me, I think he'd had a few drinks, and he told me everything I was doing wrong, in about 2 sentences. And it was devastating at the time because it was a real blow, you know, to the ego, and you know, but thank God he did it, you know, because it meant that I could fix it. And he said, you know, you play more ideas. He said, you just play licks, basically. He said, you play more ideas than I play all night in one tune. Right, but you never develop any of them, and you run out of stuff to say after 10 minutes. And I'm like, wow. But he was absolutely right, you know. And I'm like, because I thought the way you learn to play a style of music is you string licks back to back, you know, and that's how I'd learn to play, because I'd learned licks, and that's akin to learning German phrases from the phrase book, and there I am speaking German. Yeah, but you're not making any sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny actually, because I had a similar thing said to me while I was doing this course I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Because I was coming from a much more sort of blues sort of rock aspect, because that's really what I did. And I sort of dabbled with the sort of with jazz, because it's a good source of inspiration for other things, you know.
I mean, and you can put little bits of it into your blues playing. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. And that's what I used to do. So we were in this sort of combo thing, and of course most of these, I can't remember the guy who was taking the group, but they were all jazz professors, as they would be from America, you know, because and I got to know this guy really well actually, but I you know, everybody had to take a turn, and I played something, and at the end he said to the saxophone players, "Oh, don't worry about him. He's a guitarist. They can just play fast."
Okay, right, yeah.
So it was like, okay, I got that. But
noted.
So,
but,
I know. So it's a similar sort of thing. But but it was. I think that's the interesting thing, understanding that, you know, as you say, it's a language, and you have to once you get to that point about, well, what is it that you're saying?
And absolutely.
And what you're saying in this music?
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, and sometimes, okay, there's a difference between survival and then really expressing yourself. So, for example, I do like lots of shows where I have to play different styles, and I do sessions, and they're like where I might have to play something that's outside of my style, right? So I am not, like, you know, like, full disclosure, I am not by any stretch of the imagination a country guitar player. Like, some people are proper country guitar. Like Lee Hodgson is a proper country guitar player. You know, he can express himself in that style, whereas I'm not, right? But what I can play is I can string together the country, like some country sounding stuff, and I've studied it to the extent that I could get through 3 tunes, right, and play some country sounding licks, right? But they're licks, make no mistake about it, you know. But because I don't necessarily do country gigs, I've been able to get away with it, right, throughout my playing career, because I don't profess to be a country guitar player, right? Whereas, right, I do profess to be a jazz guitar player, and in that instance, it's unacceptable for me to just trot out licks, because, like, I'm going to run out of ideas. I'm going to run out. I'm going to bore myself. It's not going to be expressive. I'm not going to feel like I'm actually doing the music justice. So there's a difference. So certain styles, you know, just by necessity, you might need to just have a kind of, like, you know, emergency, get you out of trouble vocabulary, right? But then you have to, some of it's a decision then to realize, what music do you like? And I like country, it's amazing, you know, what music so I like it, but I don't like it enough to sacrifice the stuff that I really love. So the stuff that I really love, in that instance, I want to be able to express myself. So I love bluegrass, you know, but I don't love it, and I don't play it professionally, regularly. So if I were to be called to play a session, I could get through 2 tunes, right? But then I'd start repeating myself with that vocabulary. But that's okay, because that's not what I'm known for, and that's not what I do. Whereas, if it's a Django gig or whatever, I don't go in there with any kind of preconception as to, lines. They're in there, of course. There is vocabulary that I draw from, but it's a subconscious thing. I'm not consciously setting out to play anything, and I will truly improvise in the moment in the styles that I'm comfortable with. So you might find that you get that guitar player that can be free when they play the blues or whatever, and they can just play in the moment. But then if you were to put a bebop chart in front of them, sure, they're going to have their fall back on 2/5 ideas that they play, and that's fine. That's okay, because you can't do everything, and part of my journey, so to speak, has been, what's been really helpful has been in shutting down certain things, by going, okay, well, that's great. It's okay to just be a fan of that, right? Like when I was younger, the very thought that someone could do something that I couldn't do on the guitar used to make me feel ill, and
I know.
I wanted to be the best classical, rock, jazz, bluegrass, metal, like flamenco, everything. I wanted to be able to do it all. Then I realized as I get older, it's just go for what you love, and the stuff that's outside of that, I suppose some of it is necessity, isn't it? Like if for argument's sake, you realize that by not being able to do something is closing doors and you want to go that way, then you're going to have to address that. But so for argument's sake, that style, there's one style, and I always use this as an example. There's one style where players use the body of the guitar percussively, like, like the kind of thing you'd associate with guys like John Gom, Stu Ryan, Thomas Lieb, Declan Zapala, and they're amazing at this style. For me, I don't do any of that. I not even one note. I think I've attempted it for about 5 minutes in my life, but I'm quite happy to just go, that's what they do, and I love it, and I absolutely love it. I'm a fan of that stuff, but I'm not going to go there. I'm happy to just leave that, and it's not because I don't like it. I think it's amazing, but there's a point where I think, if I practice that for years, I'm still going to be, I could practice it for years to become a third-rate, percussive guitar player. When these guys they've already got that figured out. Or I could devote that time to the stuff that I really love and hopefully forge an identity as a player by myself.
And I think that's, excuse me, I think that's interesting, because I was lucky to go on a guitar, like a sort of masterclass thing with Barney Kessel.
Oh yeah. Oh, wow.
That's Maurice Summerfield used to do these. Bring him over, and he told a story exactly the same about this. He was sort of near the end of this sort of 4-day thing, where he was saying about really sort of focusing on what it is, what you are, who you are, and he said I learned quite early on that you did a lot of session work and stuff. He said, but sometimes people phone you up to do a particular session, and it was like, no, I don't do that. I don't do that sort of thing. So like somebody say, we need somebody to come and do some sort of like Latin jazz. He said, well, Lorenzo Almeida, contact him. I could do that, but that's not really what I do. And at the time, again, because I was probably about 17 or 18, listening to this sort of God basically sort of saying to you, well, I don't do that.
It's the exact opposite of Tommy Tedesco. He says yes, says yes to
exactly.
everything.
But I think the point about it is that sometimes you can be an expert of being a jack of all trades.
Yeah, but that's a thing.
But if you're not then you don't do that.
And that's a thing. That is a thing. And if that's your thing, then that's great too. And some, so I guess to a certain extent, I'm sort of known for playing in a variety of different styles. So someone might be looking at this and going, you're kind of a hypocrite because I've seen you play, fusion and rock and blues and but what they don't know, they think that I kind of get up in the morning and go, an hour of blues practice, an hour of jazz. Now I'm going to practice rock. That's not what that is. What it is between the ages of 18 to 21, all I did was play rock, like Van Halen. So that's still there. I don't need to do much to maintain that. I don't really practice that style that much, but I've recently been doing some depping. A friend of mine, Ben, Ben Witherstone, is a great young guitar player, has been doing the touring show Bat Out of Hell, and he's got me in to do some depping on that, and that's flipping amazing. I've got to play a Jackson with a Floyd Rose on it and a humbucker and 2 singles, and it's like I'm 18 again, doing dive bombs and all that kind of stuff. Now, I haven't practiced that style of guitar playing for 20 years more, but it's still there. It's always there, so you often find when you see these players that are versatile, they go, you can play jazz and blues and whatever. It's that when you scratch the surface, you go, the reason why you can do that is because you spent, when they were 25, they had 5 years playing in a big band or something, and then they got a tour with a blues band. And the one that typifies this for me, I was fortunate enough for many years to play via a friend of mine, Andy McKenzie, who's really, really good pals with John Jorgenson, who's an American session guitar player, played with Elton John and Bob Dylan and you name it, he's done it. But his passion is the Django stuff. His real passion is gypsy jazz, And I played with him whenever he played in Europe, because he's American, rather than bringing an American band over, he'd just bring himself, and get off the plane. In fact, Andy would even source guitars for him and stuff. So he'd bring himself. Andy would have fixed the band, so we would be his backing band, and we got to play Samwell and toured Europe, and it was amazing. Now, what was fantastic about this was John would, in the set, he would play 1 tune or 2 tunes on clarinet, right? And I would be with him all day, and so I know he wasn't practicing it. I know he would literally just pick the clarinet up, maybe play it for 2 minutes in sound check, and then play on the gig and sound like flipping Benny Goodman, and I'm like, okay, right, I've been with you all week. I've not seen you practice that once, right? And you just pick it up and you can play like that. And they go, do you practice the clarinet? And he said, John, when I was 18, I got a job at Disneyland, right, where I was playing the clarinet with a flipping straw belter on and a red and white stripy jacket. And I'd walk around from 9 in the morning until 6 at night playing the clarinet for about a year and a half. He goes, I don't need to practice. I don't need to practice the clarinet.
That's amazing, isn't it? That is amazing. Great story.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, that's in there. I think there is this thing we sometimes think, if we're not doing something constantly, it's going to atrophy to the extent that you're not going to be able to do it. But it so that is, it's the muscle memory is indelibly etched. I mean, I'm sure if he's got a tricky session coming up or whatever, he'll put a few hours in. But I honestly saw him pick the instrument up after not touching it all day, because we've been driving or flying to a gig or whatever. So he hasn't had opportunity and play and just sound amazing. I'm like, wow. So that's in there because he spent that time. And likewise, then he'd pick up an electric guitar and sound like Jeff Beck. And you're like, well, okay, that's because from, 20 to whatever, you were in, bar bands playing rock and blues. So that's all in there. And then he plays the Django style incredibly well, and he can play country, But if you pick it apart, it's because through his background, he'd spent 5 years doing nothing but that. He spent 3 years where he was playing in flipping L. Scruggs' band, so he's got bluegrass that. And you're like, so it's usually what it is. It's a sum of a life in music,
Yeah. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So what about the educational stuff then? You've sort of skirted around this, that you did this and then you just, that was the doorway into.
I've always done it. I started when I was 18. I got a job working for Liverpool Youth Music, I think it was called. And a night school, used to do a night school in Central Hall in town in a big kind of a big building in town where they had the run of the basement, and it was all workshops. They had a guy teaching Indian percussion in one room. They had a saxophone teacher in the next. Wow, now knowing what it was there, I wish I'd have paid more attention to him, to be honest. Knowing that he was there, knowing what I know now, I think I would have probably paid a bit more attention to him, to be honest. And then I had a little rock guitar class where you'd have a room full of eight or 10 students coming every week for 2 hours, and they paid, some nominal fee to come and take these classes. And I started doing that quite young, and that ran for a few years. Then did the usual thing, teaching privately. I ended up the college that I went to. They offered me a job when I was still studying there. Actually, they offered me a job teaching rock, because most of the guys that taught there were jazzers, and that they were aware of the fact that there was this kind of renaissance in rock guitar happening at the time. Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and all those guys were the cutting edge, and that wasn't, going back to what you said a moment ago, recognizing what you're good at. Les Bolger is an amazing guitar player, but Les was not, that's not his thing. Les would know more about Barney Kessel than Steve Vai.
Yeah.
So they got me in as the young guy at the time. If anyone wanted to know how Gary Moore played, then they'd come to me. So I was teaching at the college, and then I kept that going for years, and then as well as doing some stuff in secondary schools, the usual. Then I worked in a private music school that would do after school classes from 4 till 8 of a night, and I was doing that, but then playing as well, always playing, mixing playing with teaching. Then the opportunity came to at a new school that was opening in London, like an offshoot of the Guitar Institute. The Guitar Institute and Drum Tech had kind of gone their separate ways. They were in the same building. It was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen that edition of Steptoe and Son where they fall out with one another and divide the house down the middle,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like that.
Shows my age. Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically that, right? Where Drum Tech and Guitar Institute were in the same building, but they had different floors. So the Drum Tech then decided to have their own guitar department, which was kind of like a weird situation. And Guitar Institute got their own drum department. Eventually, the Institute moved to Kilburn, and the place that I was became Tech Music Schools, which then has now become BIM. But I ended up getting that job. That was in 2004, and that was via recommendation. Again, I've got Sean Baxter to thank for that. Well, I think he might have been in the frame to do it himself, actually, but at some point he's then gone on to do other things, and he's got his own or had his own group of schools that he pretty much exclusively wrote the curriculum for. But as it transpired, he didn't end up doing the job with Drum Tech, but he did the classic, I'm not going to do it, but I know someone who'd be perfect for it. Put me in the frame. So that culminated in me moving to London. And and that's been ongoing till to this day. Really great in the fact that at the same time that I was doing that, again via Sean, I ended up doing the gig with Carl Palmer. I was playing with Jorgenson as well at the same time. So I was playing guitar with John, and then playing bass actually with Carl. And then just by being on the scene, the guys at Guitar Techniques are always on the lookout for anyone that might sort of like be able to fulfill their quite specific criteria. Actually, I think people think that's an easy gig, but it's a tough one. I mean, as they've expressed to me many times, it's to be able to transcribe, but then also play and be articulate and lucid with those articles are quite tough, but for me, it was easy because I devoured them for 20 years. I think I'd read every single edition from cover to cover. I still do now, and I'd read every guitar player and every Guitar World and every guitarist magazine that's ever been written, I think. It feels like. So for me to jump into that world was pretty easy because I just copied what I'd already read from.
You got the start. You got the language again.
Essentially. So that brings us to this day, really, where I'm still juggling all of these things. So I'm still teaching at what's now become BIM. I do University of West London, and then when I'm up north, I come back north because I've got some regular gigs that I do here. I do a day at Chester Uni, which is lovely. It's great, I love that. It's a real breath of fresh air, because with the BIM thing is great, but for years there, I've been involved with being like the head of the guitar department, which is great. But then that involves some kind of there's responsibility involved in that job. Whereas the other unis that I work for, I just turn up and teach, which is brilliant. I love that, where I don't have to think about it from one week to the next until I'm actually arriving at the venue. Whereas the BIM thing, I've had a lot to do with things like course construction, making certain the department runs and all that. And it's great, I enjoy it. It comes with the gig, it's one of those things that comes with the gig. And then balancing that with a ton of playing. I mean, I'm playing, like I've got 5 gigs this week. I'm playing tonight. Tonight, I've got a thing I'm doing tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. However many that is, that might be 6. Yeah, that's a typical week for me. The tons of live playing. Which is at the moment it's tough in terms of like it's working daytimes and night times and so on. But what happens, my teaching, because this is one of the reasons why I only do universities. I don't do any private stuff. I don't do any Zoom lessons or anything like that, just because I need to have time to actually do creative things. And if I did, I'd have a lot more money, but I'd be very unhappy.
Yeah. So this is really, really important, because a couple of things I wanted to sort of, partly to do with that sort of balancing act as a musician, which is really difficult, particularly if you teach.
Yeah,
because you've got the thing of the late nights and then potentially the early mornings if you
absolutely, yeah,
and that is really difficult. So so you're obviously had to make some decisions about the things to let go of, and you said obviously the private.
I don't do any.
No.
And it's not because I love it, actually. I really enjoy it, but there's a point where I go, if I took that lesson on, when do I practice that day? Right. When do I get those couple of hours, that I want to, that are precious to me, that they are absolutely, like, it's going to happen. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. Like there's nothing that's going to get in the way of that time.
Yeah. So that's an interesting commitment, that you've made sure that that's the sort of mainstay of your day, that you've got that practice time.
Do you know, it has to be, Vic, because to be honest, if not, I'd be a lousy teacher as well, and the thing, what I've realized as well is, like, I mean, I'm in a fortunate position where money's, I'm not, by no means am I like super affluent, but I'm comfortable to the extent that I don't need to take every available job, which is a great position. I'm aware of the fact
because that is something that is a real issue for artists, I would say.
Absolutely. So I'm aware of the fact that that's a privilege, right? And I don't take that for granted. I really don't take that for granted, because what we've got to look at sometimes is, and this is one of the things with teaching, but again, I think I was fortunate enough in that I saw a precedent. Like I saw when I first moved to London, and I'm not going to mention any names because it wouldn't be fair to do so, but I saw certain people that were working in that world, when I first moved to London to teach, that were working in that world, that were earning a lot of money, right? And they were working, teaching long hours, right? Long hours, and working round the clock, but they were not taking gigs, because the economics of it would be, am I going to take that gig? Am I going to take that gig at 6 where they're going to pay me 50 quid?
Yes.
Right. But I'm going to get in at 2 a.m, or am I just going to do another hour or whatever teaching where I'll earn the same money and I'll be home by whatever time. The problem with it is if you don't do that gig at the 6, then you're not in the community of musicians. You're not on the list, basically. And so the problem, and I saw a few musicians that were a bit older than me, that fell a bit foul of that, where their playing career had kind of like, just because life gets in the way, where they made that decision to go, I'll take the teaching because the money's great, and it is great, and it is great. So therefore, I'm not going to do that gig because the economics are, I teach for another hour and I earn the same money or whatever it might be. But I figure, like, I'll do an hour less teaching and do the gig, because like there's something about, that's where you meet the bass player, and that's where you have to get it together, and that's where the drummer, you meet the drummer for the first time, or you get to play with that saxophone player that you've never met but you're aware of, and then it snowballs from there, and you become part of the community of players, and I think the problem is if you leave that and then you think, oh, at some stage well, then I'm going to stop teaching and just jump into the playing world. Nobody knows who you are because you're not a regular face on that scene, and I was acutely aware of that I have to balance those two things, right? Because if you're not in that community, then there are other people that are there and they get the call.
Yeah, and that's actually I heard. I would say actually that happened to me because there are other, as you say, life gets in the way. You can have other life events that come in and just exacerbate that even further. Where you have to.
Of course.
But I remember hearing a story by, I can't remember his name, John Jorgenson. Anyway, he used to be, I think he was in the Mersey Beats.
Okay.
And he was bass player, and he went to London, and he started doing a lot of session work in London.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he took a gig with Roxy Music and went on tour with them. And when he came back, he said he didn't have any sessions because obviously, similar thing, because you weren't there, somebody else had filled the space.
Absolutely. Well, the same thing can happen. I've had a few venues where I've been really fortunate enough to get residencies. So I've got it at the moment where I've got every Friday night and every Saturday night where I get to play this thing in a Django band on a Friday night, and on a Saturday I've got a Latin jazz gig where I play guitar with myself and another guitar player and a singer. Right? And that's every Friday night and every Saturday night in perpetuity, like 52 weeks of the year, Right? The problem with that is, and it's great and it's amazing, and I'm really grateful for it, particularly when gigs first started, when theatre shows and the like are not really kicking off, where for me the bread and butter is, where I kind of earn my living. Those gigs, they weren't happening because even when lockdown was removed, you need a few months to actually sell tickets, So when you do, So they couldn't just start immediately. No. So they're happening again now, which is amazing. But so what I do is I've got a whole bunch of depths. Unfortunately, they're okay with that because I need to say yes because if people keep asking me, and you go, "Can you do this night?" It's a Saturday night. They ask the first time and they say no, it's fine. They ask the second time, I say no, that's fine. They ask the third time, I say no. They stop asking because they go, "There's no point ringing John because he's not going to be available." So then you're in a situation then that, for argument's sake, and I hope it doesn't happen, but my Saturday night gig disappears. They cancel it for whatever reason. The club goes under or something. Then you're in trouble because you're not
on the circuit. Exactly.
So what I've learned to do is say yes to stuff, right? But don't take the mickey, you know what I mean? So you've got to do enough that you spin that plate metaphorically.
Yes.
And that's survival, that's and sometimes it doesn't work out financially, so for argument's sake, as I say, Ben's been asking me to dep and do some of these Bat Out of Hell shows, and sometimes it's a massive long drive to go to the other end of the country to do one show, and you think, okay, on a purely financial level, that's madness, but the point of it is that then they know that you're somebody they can rely upon, and then it works out. So for argument's sake, it's coming to Liverpool in October, and they've gone, and I've got a whole bunch of where they say, "Can you do 5 shows?" You're like, okay, great, win some, lose some, So, but it's okay. So I think that kind of thing, where just being available and saying yes to stuff, and that's something that you've got to be a little bit careful of with teaching, because it's seductive. It's really seductive, and the money. It's like the money's seductive, and it can take over your life. So one thing that I would suggest to anyone who's getting into this kind of thing, or is just at the start of the career, and maybe they're doing a bit of teaching, it's good to kind of put a lid on it and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to devote these days, and that's it. So my teaching days are Wednesday, Thursday, and I do a couple of hours on a Friday. That's it. Right. I don't do it. Like if someone unless there was a really good reason for that to change, Mondays are sort of sacrosanct. I don't teach on a Monday. Tuesday's the same, really, because I need time to work on my own stuff. I need time to record. I need time to practice. I need time to just do life things as well, and the problem would be you end up sort of turning gigs down, and you think that's what it's all about, you know. I mean, and that's, you know, and I love teaching, it's incredible, but you've got to be a little bit careful that you don't it ends up taking over, because particularly if you do teaching privately, because you know what it's like. You say, I'm going to teach Monday, Tuesday, and then the phone goes and someone says, kind of book a lesson, I can only do Wednesdays, and then before you know it, there's Wednesdays gone. Someone could you do Thursday night? And then you look at your planning and you're working 7 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's easily done. Now, I wanted to go back, because we had a conversation before we recorded, which I wanted to talk to you about. You were saying about, because you'd had a bit of a bad spell with COVID, but you said something very interesting about it. So when was it that you were ill?
Right at the start. It was like pretty much like the March of, what was it, 2 years ago now, was it? Yeah. You know, when it first broke, basically. So I think I got the unadulterated first hit of the virus,
yes,
if that makes sense.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, before there was any going through a few people first line of are we okay? Are we frozen?
Yeah, you're right. You're okay. You sort of
we're back.
You went into Dalek mode for a moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I was the first line. Yeah, so I ended up kind of in hospital for like best part of a month, which was not great. No. It was horrible, but it's, in a way, you know, now kind of sort of half jokingly say it saved my life, you know, because it's prompted some fairly dramatic changes. So, like, for example, straight after here, I've got a personal trainer booking, so I'm going to go and hit the treadmill and lift some weights, you know, like that's become a daily thing.
You said, what I thought was interesting was you were saying about, you know, you took a philosophical stance on this, which I thought was really interesting, because I think this actually sums up quite a lot of stuff about what you've been saying. It's about, well, what can I learn from this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And how can you move forward? Yeah,
exactly. You know, sort of reframing something from the point of view of like, yeah, that was a bit of a notcher for six, but hang on a minute. You know, what's this telling me?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if I'd have carried on, I think I would have been, you know, I was en route to a heart attack or something like that, because I was like really, really overweight and just making all the wrong choices, you know, like not sleeping, then eating and drinking the wrong stuff at the wrong times, and just getting stressed about things, you know, allowing things to taking on too much and allowing it to stress you out. Like, so there's a thing that you generally find it with anyone who teaches in universities. The exam weeks and the end of every term is I know the week after the term, I know to get ready for an illness, right?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, I tell you what, that's the elephant in the room, is it not?
Yeah.
For people who teach, you know, like school teachers, holidays, ill.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's it.
You think, well, hang on a minute. So there is something in that, isn't there?
Yeah, because I think maybe what it is because, you know, it's a stressful time getting everything done. Like, I think as well, when I got walloped by COVID, I think I'd one of those ridiculous, like 5 gigs a weeks, and magazine deadline plus a load of like exams to do, which are stressful, because no matter what, you feel the energy in the room, you know, like the students are stressed and you feel stressed for them, and it's pressure, and it's not nice having to fail people, you know, and stuff like that, you know. Not that I do a great deal of that, but you know, you're aware of the fact that some people are going to excel and that's brilliant, and some people are going to struggle and you try and help them, but I think I like to think I've got empathy, you know, but it rubs off. And so the week after that was when I started feeling really, really bad. So it ended up putting me into hospital, which was not good. So I think, you know, a few things go through your mind. One of them is, you know, like you realize your own mortality, you know, like I'm not indestructible, like that's not. And there's a point where you go, well, don't worry about it, mate. It's not that important. You know, certain things in life that I would agonize over or dwell on. Now I go, it's not that important. Like,
right, exactly. I tell you what, because I had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Before COVID, So the year before COVID, and it came out of the blue, and I wasn't, are you quite fit? I mean, somebody said to me, somebody said to me, how did he put it? Something like, for all the people that were on the list to have a heart attack, you were not on the list.
Yeah, because there's no obvious signs that you
exactly. But again, a lot of this was down to, there's a lot of stress, and you had a lot of things. I'd had a lot of things happen, and I'd already got to that point of not, when you do feel the stress for other people, that is absolutely true. Even when you know that it's not your head on the chopping block. Once you've got that out of the way, and you think, no, look, this is something for you to learn from, even if you fail.
Yeah.
In fact, probably more so if you fail, right? You're going to learn something important from this. So when I got out of that, I thought, right, okay, I was doing far too much driving.
Right.
Something a nurse said to me, which was like really interesting. Like, this was in Brighton Hospital. They said there are more people who drive long distances in here, like van drivers, than anyone else, than any other demographic. And I thought, I was doing like 100-mile journeys.
Yeah, I'll get it. Yeah, it's just.
And you think, well, how many other musicians are in that situation?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I do a thing now where like I just don't do stay up. Like I don't do drive backs from gigs. No. So I figure if you can't stand a 50 quid travel lodge or whatever, or 30 quid travel lodge, then I'm not doing it. So
exactly. So that's interesting. But again, as you say, I think that's a really important lesson about what you can draw from even things that you think, oh my God, what, you've got to just look at that and go, it is a lesson for me.
Absolutely. So things about the certain musical things that I want to achieve and I've done, like for argument's sake, I've just finished the second solo album, which is a trio thing. And the first one nearly killed me, and it took 10 years. And this one I got out in about a year and a bit. And I'm just not agonizing over it as much. Previously I'd want every single note to be this like exquisitely composed and arranged and performed thing. Now I'm like, it just is what it is, and don't just do it and don't worry about it so much, And the weird thing about it is I'm listening back to, like, I pretty much, it's all recorded now, I just need to mix it. Listening back to it, there's an energy there that, I think the first one, I wanted everything to be, I was striving for perfection, if such a thing exists. Whereas now it's just get it done, move on.
Exactly. Totally. I mean, my God. Yeah, absolutely.
Get it done. And so now I tend not to stress about things so much, or don't allow myself to worry about things, and be a bit more, and don't worry about if it's okay to say no to stuff. It's fine. So that way, I feel like as if. And do that. Like I've learned that it's fine to actually take the things on that make you happy. It's like, what makes me happy? Well, for example, practicing makes me happy, so I will do less work and more practicing because then I'm happy, rather than fill every available hour, never say no to anything because you're frightened that people won't ask you again or whatever. Right. So it's about just keeping that in balance, and recognizing when there's too much happening and cutting back a little bit. I think I'm at and it's not necessarily about cutting back. It's about just trying to be more selective and take on more quality things. Like take the things on that you really like, and if I'm not enjoying it, then I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, I think that's a good point to finish on there.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for your time.
You're most welcome. Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to meet you, and hopefully we can do it face to face at some point.
Yeah. That'd be great. Anyway, so all the very best for everything, and and what I'll do is I'll put your website details and stuff.
Great.
In the show notes, all right. So obviously people can find out what you're up to, and you've got obviously things about your gigs and stuff on there.
Yeah, that's right. There's an events page on there. Yeah, and there's some nice stuff happening. Some festivals are back. Hooray!
Yeah.
Hooray! But I'm always playing. So if there's some stuff that there's the local gigs, generally speaking, well, they're all on there, But if anyone wants to come and see me, they can find. I'll get even contact details and just drop me an email, and I'll tell you where I am.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, it's good. Great to meet you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Speak to you soon, mate.
Take care.
Well, I enjoyed that. Nice to be a bit anarchy with guitar. So big thanks to John. Check out his links in the show notes so you can find out about his playing and everything. He is a magnificent player. And you probably obviously picked up how knowledgeable he is. So yeah, so until next time, see you then.